The blood pooled darker than the desert night itself, and Olivia Ashford pressed her trembling hand against her mouth to silence the scream clawing up her throat as she watched three men drag the body of Sheriff Holloway behind the grain warehouse. It was August 1882 in Wasco, California, and the heat of the day had barely surrendered to the coolness of evening when Olivia had left the boarding house where she worked as a seamstress. She had been taking the shortcut behind Main Street to deliver Mrs. Henderson's repaired wedding dress, the one her daughter would wear in 3 days' time. The package still sat at her feet now, forgotten in the dirt, as she crouched behind a stack of wooden crates, her heart hammering so violently she feared they might hear it across the alley. The three men spoke in low, urgent voices. She recognized them immediately. Frank Morrison, the banker who always smiled too wide and counted his money too slowly. Dutch Carver, who owned half the cattle ranches in Kern County and bragged about it in every saloon from here to Bakersfield. And worst of all, Judge Harold Pierce, the man who had sentenced her own father to 5 years hard labor for a crime he swore he did not commit. "That makes 4 who knew about the railroad contract," Morrison was saying, wiping his hands on an expensive handkerchief. "The governor's man won't talk now." "We bury him deep," Dutch growled. "Come morning, folks will think he rode out to investigate that cattle rustling up north like he said he would." Judge Pierce's cold laugh made Olivia's skin crawl. "And in 3 months, when the railroad announces the route change, we will have bought up every inch of land they need. We will be rich men, gentlemen. Very rich men." Olivia's breath caught as her boot scraped against a loose board. The sound cracked through the night air like a gunshot. All 3 men's heads snapped toward her hiding spot. "Someone's there," Dutch hissed, already reaching for his pistol. Olivia did not wait. She grabbed her skirts and ran, abandoning the wedding dress, abandoning caution, abandoning everything except the desperate need to survive. Her boots pounded against the hard-packed earth as shouts erupted behind her. "Stop her! She saw everything!" The words chased her through the darkness as surely as the men themselves. She darted between buildings, her lungs burning, her mind racing. She could not go to the boarding house. They knew where she lived. She could not go to the deputy. Deputy Evans ate dinner at Judge Pierce's house every Sunday. There was no one in this town who could help her, no one who would believe her word against 3 of the most powerful men in the county. A gunshot cracked through the air, and wood splintered from the corner post beside her head. Olivia ducked and veered left, running toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open desert. It was suicide to run into the wilderness at night, but it was certain death to stay. She heard their boots gaining behind her, heard Dutch's voice calling out that she could not run far, that they would find her. Her side ached and her throat felt raw, but terror pushed her forward into the darkness beyond the last lamppost. The desert stretched before her, silvered by moonlight and filled with shadows that could hide anything. Rocks, rattlesnakes, bandits, or worse. But behind her was guaranteed death, so Olivia ran into the unknown. She had made it perhaps half a mile when her boot caught on a root and sent her sprawling. Pain shot through her ankle as she hit the ground hard, tasting dust and blood where she had bitten her tongue. She scrambled to get up, but her ankle screamed in protest. Behind her, she could see the bobbing lights of lanterns spreading out across the desert. They were hunting her methodically, like wolves running down wounded prey. Olivia dragged herself behind a large boulder, pressing her back against the sun-warmed stone and fighting back tears. She was going to die out here. Either the men would find her, or the desert would claim her. She thought of her mother back in Ohio, who would never know what happened to her daughter. She thought of the little room at the boarding house with her sewing basket and the half-finished quilt on her bed. She thought of all the things she would never do, never see, never become. The sound of a horse's quiet snort made her freeze. From the darkness to her left, a figure materialized astride a paint horse. The moonlight caught the silver conchos on his saddle and the worn leather of his chaps. He was tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, with a hat pulled low over his face. For a horrible moment, Olivia thought it was one of her pursuers, and she pressed herself harder against the rock. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Those men hunting you?" It was not the question she expected. Olivia's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Yes? You do something to earn it?" "I saw them murder the sheriff." The cowboy was quiet for a moment, and she heard the creak of leather as he shifted in his saddle. "That would do it." He looked back toward the searching lanterns, then down at her. "You hurt?" "My ankle. I cannot run anymore." "Then I reckon running is not going to solve your problem." He swung down from his horse with an easy grace and moved closer. In the moonlight, she could see more of his face now. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with several days' worth of stubble darkening his jaw and eyes that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. "Name's Quentin Sawyer. I have been trailing cattle thieves through here for the past week, and I am reasonably certain you are not one of them." Despite everything, Olivia almost laughed. It came out as a slightly hysterical sound. "Olivia Ashford, seamstress. Definitely not a cattle thief." "Good to know." Quentin studied the approaching lights, his expression unreadable. "How many?" "3. The banker, the biggest rancher in the county, and the judge." Quentin let out a low whistle. "You do not pick small enemies, Miss Ashford." "I did not pick them at all." "Fair point." He moved with sudden decision, scooping her up before she could protest. His arms were strong and steady as he lifted her onto his horse. "Hold on to the saddle horn. We are going to need to move fast." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they cannot follow." He swung up behind her, reaching around to gather the reins. His presence was solid and warm at her back, and for the first time since witnessing the murder, Olivia felt something other than pure terror. "There is a canyon about 3 miles northeast. I know a place." The horse moved beneath them with a smooth, ground-eating lope that carried them swiftly across the desert floor. Quentin guided the animal with the ease of someone who had spent more of his life in the saddle than out of it. Behind them, the lanterns continued their search, but Quentin chose a path across bare rock that would leave no tracks, then through a creek bed where water had run during the spring rains. Olivia held the saddle horn with both hands, acutely aware of the man behind her. His left arm rested lightly around her waist, steadying her, and she could feel the controlled strength in him. He smelled of leather and sage and wood smoke. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally, the words pulled from her by confusion and gratitude and the surreal quality of everything that had happened in the last hour. "Why would I not?" "You do not know me. This is not your fight. Those men will come after you too if they know you helped me." "Then I reckon we should make sure they do not find out." His voice held a hint of something she could not quite identify. Not amusement exactly, but a kind of calm certainty. "Besides, I have never been fond of men who murder lawmen and hunt women through the desert. Seems like a character flaw on their part. They will kill me if they catch me. I know, and you, they can try." The words were simple, matter of fact, and somehow more reassuring than any elaborate promise would have been. They rode in silence for a while, leaving the searching lights far behind. The desert at night was beautiful in a stark, dangerous way. Coyotes called in the distance, and once Olivia saw the quick, darting shape of a kit fox disappearing between the rocks. The air grew cooler as they climbed slightly in elevation, and the terrain became more broken, more vertical. Quentin guided the horse into a narrow canyon that Olivia would have ridden right past without seeing. The walls rose steeply on either side, and the path twisted and turned in a way that made it impossible to see more than 20 feet ahead. After several minutes of careful navigation, they emerged into a small box canyon with walls that rose 50 feet or more on 3 sides. "This is it," Quentin said, dismounting and reaching up to help her down. "Used to be an outlaw camp back in the 60s. Then it was a shepherd's shelter for a while. Now it is mostly just mine when I pass through this way." Olivia could see the remains of a crude shelter built against the far wall, still mostly intact. A fire ring sat in the center of the space, surrounded by smooth stones. A small spring trickled from a crack in the rock face, creating a tiny pool before the water disappeared into the sand. Quentin led his horse to the spring to drink, then began unsaddling the animal with efficient movements. "We will stay here tonight. By morning, I will have a better idea how to handle this situation." Olivia lowered herself carefully onto a flat rock near the old fire ring, wincing as her ankle protested. Now that the immediate terror had receded slightly, the pain was asserting itself more forcefully. She unlaced her boot with trembling fingers and eased it off. Even in the darkness, she could see that her ankle was swelling. Quentin finished with his horse and moved to crouch beside her. "Let me see." She hesitated, then extended her foot. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he examined the injury, probing carefully. "Not broken," he said after a moment. Bad sprain, though. You will not be walking on it for a few days." He moved to his saddlebags and returned with a strip of cloth. "There is cold water in the spring. Keep this wrapped and wet. Change it every couple hours. The cold will help with the swelling. You know medicine? Enough to keep myself alive out here." He soaked the cloth in the spring water and helped her wrap her ankle. "I learned from a Paiute woman when I was younger. She said I had the hands for healing, but the heart for wandering." A slight smile touched his mouth. She was probably right. "Why do you wander?" Quentin stood and moved to build a small fire, arranging kindling with practiced ease. "Same reason most men do, I suppose. I never much liked staying in one place. My father had a ranch up in Oregon, expected me to take it over someday, marry a suitable girl, raise suitable children, live a suitable life." He struck a match and coaxed the kindling to flame. "But suitable never felt like something I could wear comfortably. So I left when I was 18. Have been moving ever since." "Do you miss it? Your family?" "Sometimes." He added larger pieces of wood to the growing fire. "My mother writes me letters care of general delivery in various towns. I pick them up when I can. She tells me about my sister's children and my father's prize bull and how the apple trees are doing. I write back and tell her I am well and working honest jobs. We both pretend that is enough." There was something in his voice that made Olivia's heart ache. She understood something about the distance between what life offered and what a person needed. "Why did you leave?" "Really?" Quentin was quiet for a long moment, feeding the fire and watching the flames grow. When he spoke, his words were measured. "My older brother died when I was 16, thrown from a horse and broke his neck. After that, my father looked at me like I was a replacement part, not a person. Like, if I just fit myself into the shape my brother left behind, everything could go back to normal." He looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I tried for 2 years, but I could not be him, and I could not be the son my father needed me to be. So, I left before I forgot who I actually was. I am sorry. Do not be. I made my choice. I live with it." He pulled a battered coffee pot from his saddlebag along with some wrapped packages. "It is not a bad life. I see new places, meet interesting people, get into occasional trouble." The corner of his mouth lifted. Tonight being a fine example. Despite everything, Olivia found herself almost smiling. "I am sorry I brought this down on you." "You did not bring it down on me. I chose to help. There is a difference." He set the coffee pot on a flat rock at the edge of the fire to heat. "Tell me about these men. Everything you know?" Olivia told him. She described what she had seen in the alley, the murder of Sheriff Holloway, the conversation about the railroad contract and buying land. She told him about Judge Pierce and what had happened to her father, about Dutch Carver's reputation for ruthlessness in business, about Frank Morrison's connections to state politicians. Quentin listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. "The railroad is coming through," he said when she finished. "Everyone knows that, but the exact route is still supposedly being decided. They said they had inside information, that in 3 months the route would be announced and they would own all the land the railroad needs." Olivia pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The desert night had turned genuinely cold. "They murdered a man for it. They will murder me without hesitation." "Yes, they will." Quentin poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "Which means we need to make sure you are somewhere they cannot reach you, and we need evidence of what they did." "Evidence?" "Quentin, they are the banker, the judge, and the richest rancher in 3 counties. Who is going to stand against them?" "The U.S. Marshals might, if we can get word to them. The railroad company definitely will, if they find out someone is trying to manipulate land prices with inside information. And the governor will care very much that his man was murdered." Quentin sipped his coffee, thinking. "But you are right that we cannot go through local law. We need to go over their heads." "How?" "Bakersfield has a telegraph office. So does Fresno. We get you somewhere safe, then we send messages to every authority who might care about a murdered sheriff and a corrupted land deal." He looked at her steadily. "But first, we keep you alive. That is the immediate priority." Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm cup, drawing comfort from the heat. "Why are you doing this? Truly? You could have just ridden past." Quentin was quiet for a moment, studying the fire. "My brother," he said finally. "The day he died, He was riding a horse he knew was greenbroke and probably dangerous. He was showing off for a girl. I knew it was stupid. I knew he was going to get hurt. But I did not say anything, because I did not want him to think I was jealous or trying to interfere. He looked up at her. He died because I did not act when I should have. I have spent 8 years telling myself I would not make that mistake again. So when I see someone who needs help, I help. It is that simple. It is not simple at all, Olivia said softly. It is brave. Brave is what you did, running into the desert on a hurt ankle with 3 killers behind you. I am just doing what needs doing. They sat in companionable silence for a while, drinking coffee and listening to the night sounds of the desert. Olivia found herself studying Quentin in the firelight. He had a strong face, not handsome in a conventional way, but striking. There was a steadiness about him, a sense that he was someone who would do exactly what he said he would do. In the span of an hour, he had become the only person in the world she could trust. "Tell me about Ohio," he said eventually. "You are from back east originally, are not you? How did you know? The way you talk, the way you hold yourself. You have not been out here long enough for the desert to work its way into your bones yet." He poured more coffee for both of them. "What brought you to California?" Olivia hesitated, then decided that after everything, she might as well tell the truth. "My father. After he was sent to prison, my mother became ill. The shame of it, people said. Though I think her heart was just broken. She died 6 months after he was taken away. The old pain was still there, duller now, but never fully gone. I had nothing keeping me in Ohio except memories and a scandal that followed me everywhere, so I used what little money I had and came west. Wasco needed a seamstress. I needed a new start. Was your father guilty of whatever they sent him away for?" "No." The word came out fierce and certain. "He was a surveyor. Someone claimed he falsified property documents to help a land speculator steal a farm from a widow. But my father would never have done that. He was the most honest man I ever knew. Someone set him up, though I could never prove it. Who sentenced him?" Olivia looked up sharply. "What? Who was the judge in his case?" The realization hit her like a physical blow. Oh God, it was Judge Pierce. He was circuit judge for our county before he moved to California. Her hands shook, sloshing coffee onto her skirt. "That is why he looked at me so strangely when I first arrived in Wasco. He recognized me. And now you have witnessed him committing murder." Quentin's expression had gone hard. "These men have been destroying lives for a long time, Olivia. Your father was probably not the first person Pierce betrayed. Then we have to stop them. We will." The certainty in his voice steadied her. "But first we rest. You are exhausted and hurt. Come morning, we will make a plan." Quentin spread out his bedroll near the fire and insisted she take it. When she protested, he simply laid out his saddle blanket for himself and made it clear the discussion was over. Olivia lay down, her body aching and her mind whirling with everything that had happened. She expected to lie awake all night, but the warmth of the fire and the exhaustion in her bones pulled her under faster than she would have believed possible. She woke once in the deepest part of the night to find Quentin sitting watch, his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the canyon entrance. Something about his vigilance, his steady presence between her and danger, made her feel safer than she had in years. She drifted back to sleep with that thought warming her more than the fire ever could. Dawn came with the harsh gold light that was unique to the California desert. Olivia woke to find Quentin already up, checking his horse and preparing a simple breakfast of bacon and hard biscuits. Her ankle throbbed viciously when she tried to move it. "Stay off it," Quentin said, bringing her a plate of food. "I am going to scout around, see if anyone is searching in this direction. I will be back within 2 hours. Do not leave this canyon." "What if someone finds me?" He handed her a small revolver. "Do you know how to use this?" "My father taught me when I was 14. He said every woman should know how to protect herself." "Smart man." Quentin mounted his horse. "Anyone who is not me comes through that entrance. You shoot first and ask questions later. Understand?" Olivia nodded, curling her fingers around the grip of the revolver. "I will be back soon," he promised, and then he was gone, the sound of hoofbeats fading quickly. The 2 hours Quentin was gone felt like an eternity. Olivia kept the gun in her lap and watched the canyon entrance with her heart in her throat. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound potentially deadly. When she finally heard a horse approaching, she raised the revolver with shaking hands until she recognized the paint's distinctive coloring. Quentin rode in looking grim. They are still searching, spread out in groups, covering ground systematically. They have brought in more men, probably telling people you are a criminal or dangerous in some way. We cannot go back toward Wasco. Then where do we go? North toward Fresno. It is 3 days' ride, longer with your ankle the way it is. But Fresno is big enough that we can lose ourselves in the crowds, and it has a proper marshal's office with men who do not answer to Judge Pierce. He dismounted and began preparing to move camp. I am not going to lie to you, Olivia. It is going to be hard travel. You are hurt, and we will need to avoid main roads, but it is our best chance. When do we leave? Now. The longer we stay in one place, the more likely they are to find us. Packing up took only minutes. Quentin had clearly lived this kind of life long enough to travel light. He helped Olivia back onto his horse, swung up behind her, and they began the long journey north. The first day was brutal. Quentin kept them to rough country, where a single rider could pass, but a group would make noise and leave obvious signs. They followed dry creek beds and rocky ridges, sometimes dismounting to lead the horse through particularly treacherous terrain. Olivia gritted her teeth against the pain in her ankle and the exhaustion that came from long hours in the saddle. Quentin was patient and attentive, calling regular breaks to rest the horse and check on her injury. At midday, they stopped in the shade of a rock formation that looked like a giant hand reaching for the sky. "How are you holding up?" he asked, helping her down from the horse. "I am well enough." It was not entirely true, but complaining would not make the journey any shorter. "You were lying, but I appreciate the effort." He handed her water and a piece of dried meat from his saddlebag. "We will rest here for an hour. Let the worst heat pass." They sat in the shade, and Olivia found herself intensely aware of Quentin beside her. He had risked everything to help her, this stranger who owed her nothing. She studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, even as he appeared relaxed. "What are you thinking about?" he asked without looking at her. "You. Why you are really doing this." Now he did turn to face her. "I told you. You told me about your brother. But Quentin, you are risking your life. Those men have money and power. If they catch us, they will kill you as surely as they would kill me." "I know. So why?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "Because some things are worth the risk. Because if I rode away and left you to die, I could not live with the man I would become. Because..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because from the moment I saw you hiding behind that rock, terrified but not beaten, I knew I could not let anything happen to you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning that went beyond simple heroism. Olivia felt something shift in her chest, a warming that had nothing to do with the desert heat. "I do not even know you," she said softly. "I know, but maybe that will change." He stood and offered her his hand. "Come on, we should move." They rode through the afternoon, and as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Quentin found them another sheltered spot for the night. This time, it was a cluster of large boulders that formed a natural room of sorts, protected from wind and invisible from more than 50 feet away. Olivia was nearly dead with exhaustion by the time they stopped. Every muscle ached, and her ankle had swollen until it felt like someone had replaced her foot with hot stone. Quentin made camp quickly, building a small fire and heating water. "Your ankle needs soaking," he said, helping her ease down onto a flat rock. "This is going to hurt." He was right. When he eased her foot into the hot water, pain shot up her leg so intense she bit her lip bloody to keep from crying out. But after the initial agony, the heat began to soothe the swollen joint. "You did well today," Quentin said, rewrapping her ankle after the soaking. "Most people would not have made it half that far on an injury like this. I did not have much choice. There is always a choice. You could have given up. You did not." He met her eyes. "You are stronger than you think, Olivia Ashford." That night, after they had eaten and the fire burned low, Olivia found she could not sleep despite her exhaustion. Her mind kept returning to what she had witnessed, to the casual way those men had discussed murder and theft, as if they were simply business transactions. She thought about her father wasting away in prison for a crime he did not commit, about her mother dying of a broken heart, about all the other lives these men had probably destroyed in their pursuit of wealth and power. "I can hear you thinking from over here," Quentin said from his bedroll across the fire. "What is keeping you awake? Wondering if we have any chance at all. Those men have controlled everything for so long. What if we cannot stop them?" Quentin sat up, the firelight catching the angles of his face. "Then at least we tried. At least we fought back instead of letting them win without a contest." He paused. "But I think we have more than a chance, Olivia. We have truth on our side. That has to count for something. Truth did not save my father. No, but maybe it can bring down the men who destroyed him. Maybe we can make sure they never hurt anyone else." He stood and moved around the fire to sit beside her. "I know you are scared. Hell, I am scared too. But I have learned something in my years of wandering. Bad men count on good people being too afraid to stand against them. They count on silence and submission. When someone stands up and fights back, it rattles them. It makes them make mistakes. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what is the point of any of it?" He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not just determination, but something warmer, something personal. "Besides, I made you a promise. I said I would make sure they could not kill you. I keep my promises." Olivia found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by his certainty, his strength, the steady presence that made her feel less alone. "I am glad you found me that night." "So am I." His voice had gone soft, and he raised one hand as if to touch her face, then seemed to think better of it and lowered it again. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." But Olivia did not want him to move away. Acting on impulse, she reached out and took his hand. "Stay, please, just for a while." Quentin's fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. "I am not going anywhere." They sat like that for a long time, hands linked, watching the fire burn down. Olivia felt something growing between them, something that had started as gratitude and necessity, but was becoming something deeper, more complex. She barely knew this man, yet she trusted him more than she had trusted anyone in years. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. She drifted to sleep with her hand still in Quentin's, and when she woke briefly in the night, she found he had covered her with a blanket and was once again keeping watch, his rifle across his knees and his eyes on the darkness beyond their camp. The second day brought new challenges. They had to cross a stretch of open country where there was little cover, and twice they saw riders in the distance. Each time, Quentin quickly found shelter, and they waited, barely breathing, until the danger passed. "They are expanding their search," Quentin said grimly after the second near miss, "which means they still think you are in the area. Will we make it to Fresno?" "Yes." The word was flat, certain, allowing no room for doubt. "We will make it." But that afternoon, their luck ran out. They were following a narrow trail through a rocky pass when shots rang out from above. Chips of stone exploded from the rocks beside them as Quentin kicked the horse into a gallop, hunching over Olivia to shield her with his body. "Hold on!" he shouted, and the horse stretched into a full run, navigating the treacherous path with the sure-footedness of an experienced cowpony. More shots echoed off the canyon walls. Olivia felt the hot wind of a bullet passing close to her head and pressed herself against the horse's neck. Quentin had drawn his rifle and was returning fire one-handed, while somehow still controlling their mount with the other. They burst out of the pass into more open ground, and the shooting stopped. Quentin did not slow down, pushing the horse hard for another half-mile before finally allowing the animal to drop back to a walk. The paint was blowing hard, its sides heaving. "Are you hurt?" Quentin asked urgently, his hands running over her arms and shoulders checking for wounds. No, I am fine. What about you?" "I am good." But when he lowered his left arm, Olivia saw blood seeping through his shirt sleeve. "You are shot." "Just a graze. I have had worse." But his face had gone pale beneath the tan. "Stop. We need to tend to it." "Not here. Too exposed. Another mile. There is a place I know." Olivia wanted to argue, but she could see the set of his jaw and knew it would be pointless. She kept her hand pressed against his wounded arm as they rode, trying to slow the bleeding. By the time they reached the shelter, Quentin had mentioned a shallow cave tucked into a hillside. His shirt was soaked with blood. She helped him down from the horse, or, more accurately, she let him lean on her as he dismounted. Once inside the cave, he sagged against the wall, and Olivia could see the pain written clearly on his face despite his attempts to hide it. "Let me see," she said, already working to remove his shirt. The bullet had carved a deep furrow across his upper left arm. It was, as he said, not a direct hit, but it was bleeding freely and looked agonizing. "We need to stop the bleeding and clean it," Olivia said, fighting to keep her voice steady. She had never been squeamish, and her father had taught her basic wound care, but this was different. This was Quentin's blood on her hands. Quentin hurt because he was protecting her. "Water in the canteen," he said, his voice tight. "And there is whiskey in my saddlebag. Use that to clean it." Olivia worked quickly, washing the wound with water first and then dousing it with whiskey. Quentin hissed in pain, but did not pull away. She tore strips from her petticoat and bound the wound tightly, her hands surprisingly steady given the fear hammering in her chest. "How many men were shooting at us?" she asked as she worked. "2, I think. Maybe 3. They were waiting at the pass, which means they knew we were coming this direction." Quentin's jaw clenched. "Someone is tracking us, someone good. Then we cannot keep running. We have to. We are still 2 days from Fresno. 2 days in which you will weaken from blood loss and infection, and they will keep getting closer." Olivia tied off the bandage and sat back on her heels. "Quentin, you cannot protect me if you are dying. I am not dying. Not yet, but you will be if we do not do something different." She took a deep breath. "What if I gave myself up? What if I went back and told them I would not say anything about what I saw? They would kill you anyway. You know that." Quentin tried to sit up straighter and failed, wincing. "We stick to the plan. Fresno, the marshals. The plan is going to get you killed. Then I will be killed doing something that matters." The words came out sharp, edged with pain and frustration. Then his expression softened. "I am sorry. I should not have yelled. But Olivia, I am not going to let you trade your life for mine. That is not how this works." "How does it work then? You die for me? That is acceptable?" "If I have to, yes." "Well, it is not acceptable to me." She was surprised by the force of her own emotion, by how much the thought of Quentin dying hurt. "You do not get to make that choice alone." They stared at each other, and in that moment, something crackled between them, fierce and undeniable. Quentin reached up with his good hand and cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "I cannot lose you," he said simply. "I know that makes no sense. I have known you for 2 days, but I look at you and I see something I have been searching for my whole life without knowing it. I cannot let them take that away. I cannot let them take you away." Olivia felt tears burning in her eyes. "I cannot lose you either. Then we will both live." He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, carefully mindful of his injured arm. When his lips met hers, it was like coming home to a place she had never been but always belonged. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, and then deeper, more certain. When they finally pulled apart, Olivia was breathing hard, and Quentin looked at her like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. "That was probably not the smartest thing I have ever done," he said, a slight smile touching his mouth, despite the pain he must be in. "Kissing you when we are being hunted by killers, and I am bleeding all over your nice bandages." "I thought it was extremely smart." Olivia rested her forehead against his, careful not to jostle his arm. "Perhaps the smartest thing either of us has done." They stayed like that for a moment, breathing together, finding strength in each other's presence. Then Quentin shifted, grimacing. "We need to move again," he said reluctantly. "This cave is not defensible if they find us, and night is coming." They traveled more slowly now, with Quentin's injury and the fading light forcing caution. But they also traveled with a new sense of unity, of shared purpose that went beyond simple survival. Olivia rode with Quentin's good arm around her waist, and she could feel his heart beating against her back, steady and strong despite everything. As darkness fell, they found a defensible position among a tumble of massive boulders. Quentin showed her how to keep watch while he rested, teaching her what sounds to listen for, what movements to watch for in the landscape. "You are a good teacher," she said, as they shared a simple meal of the last of their supplies. "I have had to teach myself a lot of things. Might as well pass it on." He flexed his left arm carefully, testing the range of motion. The bandage was spotted with blood, but not soaked, which Olivia took as a good sign. "Tomorrow we will need to find water and maybe some game. We cannot make it to Fresno with no supplies. Can you hunt with that arm? I can shoot with my right hand. The left is just for stabilizing. But she could see the worry behind his confident words. He was weaker than he wanted to admit, and they both knew it. That night, Olivia took first watch while Quentin slept. She sat with his rifle across her lap, watching the moonlit landscape and thinking about everything that had happened. 3 days ago, her biggest concern had been finishing Mrs. Henderson's daughter's wedding dress on time. Now she was a fugitive in the desert, being hunted by the most powerful men in the county, and falling in love with a cowboy who had risked everything to save her. Love. The word should have frightened her, but it did not. It felt right, like recognizing something she had always known but never named. She looked over at Quentin, sleeping fitfully, his face drawn with pain even in rest, and felt her heart expand with something too big and too certain to deny. When she woke him for his watch shift, he pulled her down beside him for a long kiss that made her forget about danger and pain and everything except the warmth of his mouth and the strength of his arms around her. "I am in love with you," she whispered against his lips. The words surprised her even as she said them, but once spoken, she knew they were absolutely true. "I know it is insane. I know it is too fast. But I am." Quentin pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. "I have been in love with you since I saw you refuse to give up, running on a broken ankle with death behind you. You are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever met, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me." That sounds like a very long commitment. It is. I am talking about forever, Olivia. I am talking about marriage and a home and children and growing old together. I am talking about building the kind of life I never thought I wanted until I met you. We have known each other for 3 days. I do not care. When you know, you know. And I know. Olivia kissed him again, pouring everything she felt into it, all the fear and hope and certainty. "Then I guess you better keep me alive so we can have that future." "Oh, I intend to." The third day brought them into different terrain. They were climbing now, moving into the foothills where pine trees began to appear among the rocks, and the air carried a cooler edge. Quentin's wound had started to show signs of infection, despite Olivia's careful tending, and he was running a low fever. He insisted he was fine, but Olivia could see the way he swayed slightly in the saddle and the glassy look in his eyes. "We need to find help," she said as they paused at midday. "A ranch, a town, something. Cannot risk it. Anyone we ask for help might turn us in for the reward Pierce has probably posted. Quentin, you need medicine, a real doctor. What I need is to get you to Fresno." But even as he said it, he swayed and had to catch himself on the saddle horn. The decision was made for them an hour later when they came over a rise and saw a small homestead in the valley below. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Olivia could see chickens scratching in a yard. A woman was hanging laundry on a line. "No," Quentin said weakly. "Too dangerous. You need help. Now." Olivia made the decision and started guiding the horse down the slope before he could protest further. The woman looked up at their approach, her hand moving instinctively to a rifle leaning against the fence post. She was perhaps 40, weathered by sun and hard work, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "That is far enough," she called out. "State your business." "Please," Olivia said. "My husband is injured. He needs help." The woman's eyes moved from Olivia to Quentin, taking in the blood-stained bandage and his obvious weakness. "What happened?" "We were attacked by bandits. Please, I just need to clean his wound properly and maybe some food." The woman studied them for a long moment, and Olivia held her breath. Then she seemed to make a decision. "Bring him inside, but I am keeping my rifle close, so do not try anything." The homestead was simple but clean. The woman, who introduced herself as Martha Brennan, helped Olivia get Quentin inside and onto a bed. Her husband had died 2 years prior, she explained, and she ran the place alone with help from a hired hand who was currently driving cattle to market. "That is a bullet wound," Martha said flatly as she examined Quentin's arm. "You were not attacked by bandits. You are running from someone." Olivia hesitated, then decided the truth was their only option. "Yes, men who want to kill me for something I witnessed. He saved my life, and now they are after both of us." Martha looked at her for a long moment. "What did you witness?" "A murder. The sheriff of Wasco. 3 men killed him, and I saw it happen." "And your husband here, he's helping you get somewhere safe?" "He's not actually my husband," Olivia admitted. I just said that because I thought you might be more inclined to help. But you want him to be, Martha said shrewdly. I can see it in the way you look at him. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. Yes, if we survive this. Martha nodded slowly. All right then, let me see what I can do about that infection. But I want the full story, and I want the truth. Over the next several hours, while Martha cleaned and rebandaged Quentin's wound and dosed him with willow bark tea for the fever, Olivia told her everything. Martha listened without interrupting, her hands moving with practiced competence. I know Judge Pierce, she said when Olivia finished. He presided over the case when my neighbor tried to claim part of my land after my husband died. Pierce ruled against me, cost me 20 acres of good pasture. Later, I found out my neighbor had paid him off. Her expression hardened. Men like that, they think power and money make them untouchable. Maybe it is time someone proved them wrong. We are trying to get to Fresno, Olivia said. To the marshals. Fresno is still 2 days' ride, and your man cannot make that trip in his condition. He needs rest, proper food, time for the fever to break. Martha stood and moved to her pantry. You will stay here 3 days. That should be enough for him to regain some strength. Meanwhile, I can ride to my cousin's place in Madera and send a telegram to the marshals from there. They can meet you here or send men to escort you the rest of the way. That is too dangerous for you. If anyone finds out you helped us, I have been alone on this land for 2 years, girl. I have fought off cattle thieves, dealt with droughts, survived winters that would break most men. I am not afraid of some corrupt judge and his friends. Martha began preparing food with brisk efficiency. Besides, like I said, maybe it is time someone stood up to them. Quentin drifted in and out of consciousness over the next day while the fever burned through him. Olivia stayed by his side, cooling his face with damp cloths and making him drink water whenever he woke. During the worst of it, he called out for his brother, for his mother, and once, deliriously, he reached for Olivia's hand and begged her not to leave him. I am here, she whispered, holding his hand tightly. I am not going anywhere. I promise. Martha left on the second day to ride to Madera and send the telegrams. She left Olivia with her rifle and stern instructions to shoot anyone who came to the homestead who was not her. I will be back by tomorrow evening, Martha said. Keep him comfortable and keep yourself safe. The day alone on the homestead with Quentin was one of the longest of Olivia's life. Every sound made her jump, certain that Pierce's men had found them. But no one came, and by evening Quentin's fever finally broke. He woke fully for the first time in 2 days, his eyes clear and focused. Where are we? He asked, his voice hoarse. A homestead about 20 miles south of Fresno. A woman named Martha is helping us. She has gone to send telegrams to the marshals. Olivia helped him sit up enough to drink some broth. How do you feel? Like I have been trampled by a herd of cattle, but better. He looked at his bandaged arm. You have been taking care of me. Of course I have. I am sorry. I was supposed to be protecting you, not the other way around. We protect each other. That is how this works. She smoothed the hair back from his forehead. You scared me, Quentin. When the fever was at its worst, I thought I might lose you. I told you I keep my promises. I am not going anywhere. He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. Did you mean what you said before about loving me? Every word. Good, because when this is over, when we have dealt with Pierce and his friends and you are safe, I am going to marry you properly, with a church and address and witnesses. I want everyone to know you are mine and I am yours. Olivia felt tears sting her eyes, but they were happy tears. That sounds perfect. We will build a life together. Maybe go up to Oregon, meet my family, or stay in California if you prefer. I do not care where we are as long as I am with you. We will figure it out together. But first, we have to make sure those men face justice for what they have done. Martha returned the next evening as promised, looking satisfied. Telegram sent. I reached the U.S. Marshal's office in San Francisco and also contacted the railroad company's security division. Both are sending people. She dismounted and began unsaddling her horse. The railroad company especially was very interested when I told them someone was manipulating land prices with inside information about the route. How long until they arrive? Quentin asked. He was up and moving again, still weak but recovering quickly with rest and Martha's good cooking. 2 days, maybe 3. The railroad is sending their head of security, The marshals are sending 2 deputies from San Francisco. Martha smiled grimly. I also sent a telegram to the governor's office informing them that Sheriff Holloway was murdered and the local judge is complicit. That should make things interesting. Over the next 2 days, while they waited for help to arrive, Olivia and Quentin talked for hours. He told her about his childhood in Oregon, about his mother's garden and his father's strict ways, about the brother he still missed. She told him about Ohio, about her father's integrity and her mother's gentle spirit, about the scandal that drove her west. I want to find out what really happened to your father, Quentin said. If Pierce was involved, if someone set your father up, we will find proof. That case was years ago. The evidence is probably long gone. Maybe, but Pierce keeps records. Men like him, they document everything. If he took bribes, if he conspired with someone, there will be a paper trail. We just have to find it. On the 3rd day, riders appeared on the horizon. Martha kept her rifle ready, but these were the men they had been waiting for. 2 U.S. Marshals and 3 railroad security agents, all hard-eyed professionals who listened to Olivia's story with the kind of attention that said they believed her. We have been investigating Judge Pierce for 6 months, one of the marshals said. His name was Deputy Marshal Collins, and he had the look of a man who did not give up easily. We suspected corruption, but could not prove it. Your testimony, Miss Ashford, gives us the leverage we need. The railroad company is very interested in who had access to route information, added the head of railroad security, a man named Thompson. We kept that information tightly controlled specifically to prevent land speculation. If Pierce and his associates had insider knowledge, someone in our organization or the governor's office was feeding it to them. What happens now? Olivia asked. Now we go to Wasco and we arrest them, Collins said. All 3 of them, on charges of murder and conspiracy. With your testimony and the evidence we will seize from their properties, we will put them away for life. They will try to run, Quentin said. They will not get far. We have more men positioned in Bakersfield and Fresno. Whatever direction they run, we will catch them. Collins turned to Olivia. We will need you to testify, Miss Ashford. Are you prepared for that? I am. She felt Quentin's hand find hers, felt his steady presence beside her, and knew she could face anything. I am ready to see justice done. The ride to Wasco was surreal. What had taken days of desperate flight took only a day and a half of steady travel with armed marshals surrounding them. When they finally rode into town, it was late afternoon, and Main Street was full of people going about their daily business, completely unaware that their world was about to change. Collins and his men moved with military precision. One group went to the bank to arrest Morrison. Another headed to the judge's house. Collins himself, along with Quentin and Olivia, rode to Dutch Carver's ranch on the outskirts of town. Carver was in his yard when they arrived, and the look on his face when he saw Olivia alive and accompanied by federal marshals was almost worth everything she had been through. Almost. Dutch Carver, Collins said formally, you are under arrest for the murder of Sheriff Thomas Holloway and conspiracy to commit fraud. Carver's hand moved toward his gun, but Quentin was faster. His pistol cleared leather in a blur of motion, and suddenly the rancher was staring down the barrel of a Colt .45. I would not, Quentin said quietly. I have been shot, nearly killed, and forced to spend days in the desert keeping this woman alive because of what you did. I am not in a charitable mood. Carver slowly raised his hands. They brought all 3 men to the jail together. Morrison had been taken without resistance, weeping and begging and offering to testify against the others. Pierce had tried to brazen it out, claiming political connections and threatening consequences. But when Olivia walked into the jail, very much alive, and identified all 3 of them, his face had gone ashen. You saw nothing, Pierce said, his voice shaking. You could not have seen anything in that darkness. I saw you murder Sheriff Holloway, Olivia said steadily. I heard you discuss the railroad route and your plans to profit from his death. I heard you laugh about it. She is lying. This woman has a grudge against me. I sentenced her father to prison years ago, and now she is seeking revenge. Funny you should mention that, Deputy Marshal Collins said. He held up a ledger they had found in Pierce's home office. Because we found records of several cases where you accepted payments to rule in certain ways, including a case involving a surveyor named James Ashford. It seems you were paid $500 to send an innocent man to prison. The color drained from Pierce's face. Olivia felt her knees go weak, and Quentin's arm came around her waist, supporting her. My father, she whispered, You destroyed him for $500. I did not know, Pierce said desperately. I did not know he was innocent. You did not care, Collins corrected. And now you will pay for that along with everything else. The trial took 3 months. During that time, Olivia and Quentin stayed in Fresno, living in a small hotel and waiting for justice to be served. The railroad company paid for their accommodations, grateful for the information that had prevented a massive fraud. The evidence against Pierce, Carver, and Morrison was overwhelming. Aside from Olivia's eyewitness testimony, the marshals had found extensive records of their corruption, including proof that they had been paying a clerk in the governor's office for information about the railroad route. The trial was a sensation. Newspapers from San Francisco to Sacramento covered every detail. The conviction of all 3 men on multiple charges of murder, conspiracy, fraud, and corruption was celebrated throughout California as a victory for honest people everywhere. For Olivia, the victory was bittersweet. Her father was released from prison, his conviction overturned, but he was a broken man. The years of hard labor and injustice had aged him beyond his years. Still, he wept when he saw his daughter, and she wept when she introduced him to Quentin. You protected my girl, James Ashford said, shaking Quentin's hand. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing, sir. I love your daughter. Protecting her was a privilege, not a duty. They were married in a small church in Fresno in early December 1882. Martha Brennan stood up as Olivia's matron of honor, and Deputy Marshal Collins served as Quentin's best man. James Ashford walked his daughter down the aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. I wish your mother could see you, he whispered as they paused at the altar. You are so beautiful, so strong. She would have loved him, Olivia said, looking at Quentin waiting for her in his best suit, his eyes full of love and promise. Yes, she would have. After the wedding, they traveled to Oregon so Olivia could meet Quentin's family. His mother cried and welcomed her with open arms. His father was stiffer, more reserved, but even he seemed to soften when he saw how his son looked at his new wife. You have changed him, Mrs. Sawyer said to Olivia one evening as they prepared dinner together. He seems settled in a way he never was before, like he has finally found what he was searching for. He saved my life, Olivia said simply, and then he gave me a reason to live it fully. They stayed in Oregon through the winter, helping on the ranch and planning their future. Quentin's relationship with his father slowly began to heal, built on honest conversations about the past and genuine acceptance of who Quentin was, rather than who his father wished him to be. In the spring, they returned to California, but not to Wasco. That town held too many painful memories. Instead, they settled in the small town of Madera, near Martha Brennan's homestead. Quentin bought land with the reward money the railroad had given them for preventing the fraud, and they built a small ranch. Olivia continued her sewing, but now she took only the projects that interested her, and she taught other women in town the skill as well. Quentin ran cattle and horses, and people quickly learned that he was as honest in business as he was skilled with livestock. James Ashford came to live with them, his health slowly improving with proper food and rest and the knowledge that his name had been cleared. He helped around the ranch and delighted in telling anyone who would listen about how his son-in-law was a genuine hero who had protected his daughter against all odds. Martha became like a second mother to Olivia, a steadfast friend who had risked everything to help strangers because it was the right thing to do. She had Sunday dinner at their ranch nearly every week, and when Olivia's first child was born in the summer of 1884, it was Martha who assisted with the delivery. The baby was a boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's determined expression. They named him Thomas James for the murdered sheriff whose death had brought them together, and for Olivia's father, who had suffered so much injustice. He is perfect, Quentin whispered, holding his son with the kind of wonder that came from knowing how close they had all come to never existing. You are perfect. We are blessed, Olivia agreed, looking at her husband, her son, her father, dozing in the chair by the window and feeling the truth of it deep in her bones. Their second child came 2 years later, a daughter they named Rose Elizabeth. She was tiny and fierce and absolutely fearless, climbing everything she could reach and declaring at age 3 that she was going to be a cowboy just like her papa. Heaven help us, Quentin said, watching his daughter attempt to rope a very patient old barn cat, but he was grinning as he said it, clearly proud of her spirit. Through the years, their ranch prospered, and their love deepened. They faced hardships, as all families do. A drought in 1888 tested their resources. Illness swept through the county in 1890, and they nearly lost Thomas to scarlet fever. But they faced everything together, never forgetting how easily they might have lost each other in the desert that August night in 1882. Olivia never forgot what it felt like to run for her life, to be hunted by men who saw her as nothing more than an inconvenient witness to be eliminated. But more importantly, she never forgot what it felt like when a stranger on a paint horse rode out of the darkness and offered his hand, his protection, his heart. Quentin never forgot the woman hiding behind a rock, terrified but unbroken, who looked at him and chose to trust. He never forgot the promise he made that night, that they would not kill her, that he would keep her safe. It was a promise he kept every day of their lives together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they stood on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the valley they had made their own. Their children were grown now, Thomas working the ranch alongside his father, and Rose teaching school in town, while courting the son of the local doctor. James Ashford had passed peacefully in his sleep 3 years earlier, his final years filled with love and dignity. Martha still lived nearby, now in her 70s, but still tough as leather and sharp as ever. "Do you ever think about that night?" Olivia asked, leaning against her husband's solid warmth. "When you found me in the desert?" "Every day," Quentin said. "It was the night my real life began." "Mine too." She turned to face him, and he cupped her face in his hands the same way he had the first night in the desert, with the same gentleness, the same certainty. "I love you, Quentin Sawyer. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die. And I will love you beyond that," he promised, and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness of a man who had spent 20 years learning every detail of the woman he loved and still found new reasons to fall deeper every day. They had built a good life from those desperate days when death hunted them through the California desert. They had taken fear and pain and injustice and transformed it into love, into family, into a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. Their children would tell their children about the night a cowboy saved a seamstress from killers and found his heart in the process. They would tell them about courage and integrity and standing up for what was right, even when the cost was high. But more than that, they would tell them about love, real love, the kind that chose to act when it could have walked away. The kind that faced down danger and hardship and held on through everything. The kind that started in darkness and grew into light. Started with strangers and grew into soulmates. Started with survival and grew into the kind of life worth living. Years later, when their grandchildren asked how they met, Olivia and Quentin would sit together on that same porch and tell the story. About a murder witnessed and a desperate flight through the desert. About a cowboy who chose to help when he could have ridden past. About how sometimes the worst moments of your life lead directly to the best, if you are brave enough to keep moving forward. They would have killed her for what she had seen that night, Quentin would always say, reaching for Olivia's hand. But I made sure they could not kill her, and in saving her life, I found my own. And Olivia would squeeze his hand and add, "He gave me everything. Safety, love, a future I never dared to dream about. He taught me that even in the darkest nights, there is always hope if you are willing to trust in it." Their story became legend in Madera and the surrounding counties. People spoke of it with reverence, proof that good could triumph over evil, that love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, that one person's courage could change the course of multiple lives. Young women dreamed of finding a love like theirs. Young men aspired to be the kind of man Quentin was, honorable and brave and true. But for Olivia and Quentin themselves, it was never about legend or story. It was simply their life, built day by day, choice by choice, with love as the foundation for everything. They worked their ranch, raised their children, supported their community, and loved each other with a depth and constancy that only grew stronger with time. When Quentin was injured badly while breaking a horse in his 60th year, Olivia nursed him back to health with the same fierce devotion he had shown her that long ago night in the desert. When Olivia fell ill with pneumonia the following winter, Quentin sat by her bedside for days, holding her hand and telling her stories until her fever broke and she returned to him. "We are growing old," Olivia said one morning, looking at the silver in Quentin's hair and the lines around his eyes that came from a lifetime of squinting into the sun. "We are growing old together," Quentin corrected. "There is a difference, a significant one. They lived to see their children married and happy. They celebrated the births of 6 grandchildren and delighted in spoiling each one. They watched their ranch continue to prosper under Thomas's capable management and swelled with pride when Rose's first book of poetry was published, drawing on her mother's stories of courage and survival. On a warm spring morning in 1922, 40 years after a terrified seamstress ran into the California desert and a wandering cowboy chose to help her, Olivia and Quentin sat together on their porch in their customary rocking chairs. They were both in their 70s now, slowed by age but still sharp of mind and full of life. "No regrets?" Quentin asked, as he had asked 1,000 times over the years. "Not a single one," Olivia answered, as she had answered every time before. "You? Only that I did not find you sooner. But then, perhaps we needed to become who we were before we could find each other." "Perhaps so." Olivia reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. "We have had a good life, Quentin Sawyer. The best life. The only life I ever wanted, though I did not know it until I found you." He brought her hand to his lips. "If I could go back and do it all again, I would not change a single thing. Not even the part where you got shot protecting me? Especially not that part. It proved to you that I was serious about keeping my promises." Olivia laughed, the sound still bright and young despite her years. "You have been proving that to me every day for 40 years. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher in the clear California sky. In the distance, they could see Thomas working with a string of young horses and hear the laughter of grandchildren playing in the yard. The ranch was alive with activity, with purpose, with the continuation of everything they had built. "Thank you," Olivia said softly. "For what?" "For riding past that boulder instead of keeping going, for choosing to stop, for making sure they could not kill me. Thank you for trusting me, for running into the desert instead of giving up, for loving me even when it made no sense to." Quentin squeezed her hand. "We saved each other, Olivia. That is the truth of it. I protected your body, and you saved my soul." As the sun rose higher and the day stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility, they remained where they were, hands linked, hearts intertwined, 2 people who had found in each other exactly what they needed most. The dangers that had brought them together were long past, but the love they had discovered in the midst of those dark days remained as strong and vital as ever. They would kill her for what she had seen that night, all those years ago in Wasco, but the cowboy made sure they could not kill her. And in that act of courage, in that choice to help a stranger in desperate need, he had created something far more powerful than either of them could have imagined. He had created a love story that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of choosing good over evil, action over inaction, love over fear. Their story was far from over, though its ending was inevitable. But that ending, when it came, would be peaceful and natural, surrounded by family and love and the knowledge that they had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. They had faced darkness and emerged into light. They had found each other against impossible odds and built a life that mattered. And in the end, that was everything. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything a life should be. The cowboy and the seamstress, brought together by violence but bound by love, sitting together in the sunshine of a California morning, their hands linked as they had been since that first desperate night in the desert. They had survived, they had thrived, they had loved, and that love, born in darkness and desperation, had illuminated not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they touched. It was a legacy that would continue long after they were gone, a story that would be told and retold, inspiring others to choose courage over fear, action over passivity, love over hate. They would kill her for what she had seen that night, but the cowboy made sure they could not kill her. And in the end, that made all the difference in the world.